Welcome to Guest of the Year. I'm the host. My name's Mike. Today we've got 4 deadheads from around the country competing for a prize pack donated by Some Saxy Art. It's Saxy with an A, like Some Saxy Art, but with an A. Its creator is 24. He was a junior in college during COVID, and he was really bored, and he just started drawing on his tablet. Just picked up one of those Apple pencils, started drawing. He's been a lifetime deadhead, and then he just got really good at drawing, and he's now 24, graduated, and he has drawn concert posters for Goose and Pigeons playing ping pong, and has a store full of awesome shirts, patches, pins, posters, like everything. He's incredibly talented, has a great distinct style. Andrew, cool dude. Some Saxy Art on Instagram and somesaxyart.com. I'll put all the info in the show notes or in the description there. Every week we're going to have a different prize pack, and all the prize packs are curated by Mason from AKA From the Lot. He is going around and just curating the prize pack of artists who are established and up and coming both. So thanks, Mason. And thanks, Andrew. All right, here's how the game works. We'll play the first part of Grateful Dead live track, and each contestant will use the messaging system to silently guess which year the performance is from. Contestants who are all on video to prevent any possibility of cheating can submit their guesses at any time during the clip or in the 10 seconds after it concludes. Whoever is furthest from the correct year is eliminated. The last 2 deadheads standing will have a best of 3 series to determine a winner. We've got our returning champion Andy here with us, and we'll meet the rest of the deadheads in a moment. But first, let's hear the first song. Without further ado, The Grateful Dead. All right, the guesses are in. Shakedown Street at New Haven Coliseum in New Haven on October 25th, 1979. Shakedown Street, the album, was the last with Keith and Donna Godshaw. Donna had sole songwriting credit on the song From the Heart of Me. So we had 2 people get it exactly, 1979. Our returning champ, Andy and James. Andy, we'll start with you. You guessed 79. You actually submitted quite quickly. What'd you hear there?
Well, for me, it was really Brent's sound, the kind of laid back, almost toy piano sound happening in the mix. And this is one of those, there's something about the 79 sound on that tour, I think, where it's a little crunchy on the bass. It feels really up front. It's probably the first song of the set, and they're still like dialing in the sound on the soundboard. So it's a little uneven, but yeah, I think It's definitely a giveaway for me was Brent's tone, and obviously Jerry sounding great singing that. So we're definitely talking about earlier than normal for Shakedown, but as early as it gets for Brent, there is 79. So
Great, Andy. The champ is on in the next round. And actually, you just got back from playing in the sand. How did the fellas sound?
oh, it sounded great. Amazing here in 2023 to see, Bob, Mickey, and Billy, and of course John Mayer and O'Teal and Jeff, and they had a lot of help too. It was really a blast. Best setting you could possibly have. Feet in the sand, just awesome. We're in for an amazing year of Dead and Company music.
Awesome. Andy, who is 47 and from Chicago, is one step closer to defending his title. James, who is 32 and from Larkspur, will be joining him in the next round because James also guessed 1979. Full journalistic integrity. I know James. He's my buddy. So just want to disclose that because this is a competition. So, James, why 79?
It's a bit of a guess. I feel like I got kind of lucky, but Brent's voice wasn't there, so I was kind of searching my mind and thinking about like, is this Keith? Was there a little Keith going on, and was it part of that kind of disco sound that they were going for with that song? But eventually, I just thought about the rest of the '80s and how I'd heard that keyboard sound throughout. So just went for 79.
Nice work. And you're on to the next round. How'd you get into the Dead, James?
I played guitar since I was about 10 years old, and dismissed Jerry Garcia like out of pocket early on. And growing up in Marin County, you'd always hear about the Grateful Dead and how good they were, and there's like maybe a little hometown bias against them for that reason as a young kid. And then in my mid-20s, I probably honestly late 20s towards COVID coming on, I just completely did a 180 and completely flipped, probably after hearing Ruben and Charisse for the first time, and kind of has been a bit of a complete sea change in how I listen and conceive of music, and I'm grateful for it.
So Ruben and Charisse did it. Why?
I see those videos online of them playing. The few times they played it online, every single one of them is different, and every single one of them is brilliant. And there's one where you see them kind of just go into like this kind of flow state, but they're also just really, really, they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure out that part of the jam at the very end, and they can't quite get it until they finally do. And there was just this lesson about like chasing perfection and what music is about that I just found really, really profound in that song. So after that, I was like, let's go. I know there's a good amount of music to listen to, so, and I'm late to the party, so let's go.
Yeah, I guess there's only like 6 Ruben Charisses or whatever, so then you're forced to like, all right, well, what else is going on here?
Exactly.
Nice work, James. Ben will be joining you in the next round. Ben's 46. He's also from Chicago, and he actually knows Andy, and they just reunited after many years apart while we were chatting before the show started. So 2 sets of buddies here. Ben guessed 1981. He's on the next round, which means Peter's odd man out. Peter guessed 1983. Sorry, Peter. Everyone was just super on their game. But we'll meet you in a second, Peter. First, Ben, why 81?
I had a feeling in my mind that it was somewhere between both 1980 and 82. And so I kind of shot right in the middle of it, figuring that was the wise move. But yes, certainly that raw sound in both Brent's singing as well as the keyboard playing, that heavy bass forward, Phil's tone on it, like, kind of brought me to more of a early 80s. But again, I think we made a lot of good points as to why that was exactly from 79. That was a good one.
Thanks, Ben. How'd you get into the Dead?
My uncle, my mom's dad had record albums back in the day. He had, a number of different rock and roll albums, but specifically, he let me borrow both American Beauty and Blues for Allah. And so I first was introduced to him by family members listening to him on album. And in high school, I got a subscription to Relics magazine in order just to simply keep up with the goings on of the Dead and Fish and other Bay Area and other rock and roll bands. But there was a section in Relics magazine where people would write in their favorite tapes. And so as a young person getting into the Dead, I would read this section and think to myself, oh yeah, that sounds like a great tape. I wish I could listen to that also. And back in the day, they would include their addresses. And so I wrote away to this one guy in New York whose favorite tapes I thought sounded real tasty. And he wrote back to me and he said, hey, I'd love to trade with you. I didn't have anything to offer, but he would make some for me, make some tapes. And but he said, even as I'd love to do this, I've been trading over the years with a guy in your neighborhood in Chicago for years and years. Our lists are about the same. And if you wouldn't mind, I'll give you his address. And so ultimately I got in touch with this guy named Richard. And in high school, my tape collection grew like nobody else had. And I got some really great tapes. And I just found myself falling into that music head first. And I really haven't looked anywhere else since.
Okay, so he tells you about this mythical Richard. And then how do you guys connect logistically?
I believe I wound up writing him a letter because I don't think any phone numbers were involved yet. Ultimately, I did get Richard's phone number. And even as I went to college, which is where I met Andy, I still kept trading tapes with Richard. He sent a few packages to my dorm in Iowa City. And, tapes from then, you had to like work to make them, sit around for 90 minutes to make them. And then you sit around and you listen to them and you write out, on the pieces of paper that surround the cassette, what the set lists were. And so they become kind of an extension to you. And I have yet to find it within me to get rid of my tape collection. I still have hundreds of tapes in the crawl space downstairs.
So as you recorded more tapes, you were kind of able to be an equal partner in this relationship, this exchange.
Not with Richard. Richard kind of always had the leg up on me, but I did find my way to trading with a whole bunch of other folks. So I think Richard through me wound up getting, passed on and distributed to a better portion of the Midwest.
Ben, I love that story. Thank you. And thanks for being here. Peter is 28 and he's from Norwalk, Connecticut. He guessed 1983. Peter, I'm sorry, you're eliminated. What'd you hear there?
Yeah, so I mean, you could definitely tell like it was an earlier shakedown. I was kind of just gauging off Jerry's voice, sounding pretty clean. Kind of just playing the game, though. I didn't want to go too early, didn't want to go too late, so I kind of just guessed in the middle, 83. Should have, guessed a little earlier, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if everyone else wasn't so spot on, you'd be fine. Peter, how'd you get into the Dead?
So for me, it was like kind of like a conscious decision. Like, all right, I'm gonna like listening to the Grateful Dead. I went most of my life not having heard really any of the Dead. My buddy was always kind of telling me like, yo, you really like them, you should check them out. And finally one day I was like, all right, send me some sets and I'll check it out, thinking maybe I would be like a casual Grateful Dead listener. And then obviously that doesn't happen. You just become fully obsessed. So
So when you were like, all right, I'm going to get into the Dead, what was your motivation behind that at the time?
Oh, I mean, you always know it's like this huge thing that, it's like this massive thing that people are obsessed with and go on tour and follow the Dead. So I always knew that side of it, which kind of always intrigued me, but, never took the time to actually listen.
Okay, I got to air you out here. You are a very talented painter. I believe you use acrylic, right?
Yeah, I use acrylic paint.
Okay, that's what it looked like. And Your stuff isn't Dead centric, but are you able to draw inspiration from the band at all?
I mean, really, I've only been listening to the Dead for a year now, almost exactly a year. And obviously I was painting well before listening to the Dead. And kind of I've been in like maybe like a creative slump, I'd say. And yeah, definitely listening to the Dead. I don't know, it's kind of hard to put into words, but just like the way you can look at a set list and be like, okay, I've heard all these songs before, but then you listen to it and it's a completely different, something in it might click differently for you. So then that makes me look at my own art differently, like, okay, maybe I've done this before, but it's worth revisiting because something else will click in it, yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. I think the stock answer there and an acceptable answer would be like, hey, I learned to let go and improvise and, be abstract or psychedelic even. But you're saying you learn to go back and revisit and go deeper into an aesthetic you were already working on, just the way the Dead do with, their jams every night.
Right. And, maybe it's like the 100th time they've played Truckin', but this time in particular, it's like, it's just different, So.
Cool, Peter. That's a cool ass fucking answer. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
All right. James, Ben, and Andy are now fighting for 2 spots in the best of 3 series. Let's play the song. The guesses are in. It was Uncle John's band at Parc des Expositions in Dijon, France, on September 18th, 1974. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame named Uncle John's Band as one of the 500 songs that shaped rock and roll. The only other Grateful Dead song included in the list was Dark Star. One person got it exactly. It was James. Nice work, James. What'd you hear?
I guess I was focusing in on Keith. I'm aware of his playing, being up and down, later on. And in this situation, I felt like it was pretty strong. In terms of that recording, it was kind of understated. And yeah, I kind of got lucky with a stab at 74 there.
So it could have been like anywhere. It was like 72 to 74.
100%. 75 felt a little, it didn't sound like recordings that I would associate with 75. And then, so I would have gone 70, 73, 72, 73, 74, right in that range.
Well, everyone did go 72, 73, 74. Ben guessed 73. He was closer. He goes on to the finals with you. Andy guessed 72, our champ. We'll go to Ben first. Ben, you're on to the finals. Why 73?
That certainly had a bounce to it and I think in 74 you can somewhat hear the microphones a little bit and the wall of sound and those double microphones. And at first, right when the recording started, I thought, yep, that's 74. And I attributed it to some type of a recording reason. But as the track progressed, as we heard more of that Uncle John's Band version, I kind of thought that it had a certain, I don't know, laid back, stripped down, jazzy, bouncy thing that I put more in 73 than 74. So that, hence my guess.
Nice work, Ben. You're on to the finals. Andy, 72. Our defending champ is eliminated. Sorry to see you go. What'd you hear there?
Well, I should have just gone with my gut. My first reaction was 74. I think Ben made a great point there about the wall of sound. Again, similar to the shakedown that we had earlier, it's like this is either the beginning of the set or coming out of some jam where the sound's just coming back together again. It's almost like everyone's plugging back in or something. And so it's getting pieced together. And right away, the first thing that jumped out to me was, this is Billy. This is just Billy. And this is Billy after playing without Mickey for a couple of years. So that's where I had 72 at the bottom end. And then, yeah, I don't know. I just somehow was like in my head 74, then 73, then just like, I'll just go 72, which inadvisable, but we got some really good competition here. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see where this goes, even though I will no longer be involved. But yeah, it's been a great ride, and I forgot about the gigs they did in 74 in Europe. So
you mentioned Billy alone on the kit. Do you have a preference for single or double drummer?
I mean, to me, in the era of the Grateful Dead, where I was lucky enough to see shows in the early mid 90s, I felt like it's the two drummers that really defines the sound, and there's nothing like it. And that holds true, 30 years later with Dead and Company. And it's as OG as it gets, Grateful Dead, when you hear those two drummers playing together, complementing each other. And that's awesome. Now, that said, I'm huge on 72 to 74 Dead. So that is one drummer, and nobody plays drums like Billy in any kind of music, really. It's super unique, and it's got a great shuffle to it. So do I have a preference? I guess what I'm getting at is no. I love listening to shows from the era of solo Billy, but really what makes the Grateful Dead to me is having the two drummers.
Doesn't it seem more fun with two drummers, right?
It is more fun. It's more of an adventure. It's more of a ride. But the songs are so strong, and I think they're really showcased during that period. They'll play where they would play like 15 song first sets, and it'd still get in that like Truck Another One Wharf Rat sequence or something like that. Such a special group, and so great to be able to hear such crystal clear recordings, accessible at the snap of a finger nowadays. As someone who could relate to Ben's experience, early on for me, it was using the Well, actually, which was like a Usenet almost kind of group that I wouldn't have been able to get into if I wasn't at university in the mid 90s. And you could log into that, and David Gans was there and different people, and just a small it's called like the Whole Earth Electronic Link, the Well. And that's where everything was happening. All the conversations about the Dead. Of course, there were no images or anything, but I was able to trade tape lists with people and then meet up with them at shows and do a little swap. So it's just amazing to see how everything's evolved.
Wait, so David Gans was on the message board and you recognized him just by his like handle or something?
Yeah, gosh, I can't remember what his handle was right now, but I don't know if it was just his hobby or part of his job, but it was like the after a show, someone would post the set list pretty quickly. Before that, it was honestly, I think it was like a 1-900 number that you could call like an hour after a show ended and you'd hear a reading of the set list.
So you were playing in the sand and I was at home and I was refreshing this playing the sand set list just to see what they were playing. And it seems like this is a common thing throughout the ages as, you know, Deadheads have followed concerts remotely. Why do you think we're so into following set lists for shows we're not attending?
Oh, you could just put yourself there so quickly, close your, everybody, well, every fan knows the kind of sequence that happens, right? After a while, you're like, okay, so it's going to be what, 4 or 5 songs, then you're going to get drums in space, and then something interesting, maybe rocking out of space, and then you're going to get the slow Jerry ballad. What's that going to be? Is it going to be Standing on the Moon? Is it going to be Days Between? Is it going to be Wharf Rat? Are we going, as happened the other night, is it going to be Althea, All Along the Watchtower, Morning Dew? I happen to call that one, but that was kind of a very ambitious call, and I would take that any night. So, but right, when you're sitting at home, you could visualize it and kind of, I mean, imagine if someone's like sitting watching like someone dream and they're like, oh, now they're dreaming about this, and you could just boom, put yourself there in like this blissful spot of knowing what it might hear like, what it sound like, and what it might feel like, the vibe you would feel, and like, and then you also kind of want to predict it. It's a fun game we play as Deadheads, and when you're at the show too, everyone's listening for the cues, like, oh, what's it going to be? What do you hear? What do you hear? Everyone's playing that game, which is fun.
All right, Andy, great run. Thanks so much for doing this. We'll see you at the Tournament of Champions.
Looking forward to it. All right, good luck, guys. I'll stick around and listen in.
All right, James and Ben are going on to the finals, best of 3 series. Let's play the first song.
Fare you well, my honey. Fare you well, my only true one. All the birds that will sing are flown, except you alone. I'm gonna leave this broke down house on my hands and my knees. I will roll, roll, roll. Think about it, the river. In a bed by the waterside, I will lay my head, listen to the river sing sweet songs to rock my soul.
Broke Down Palace at Brendan Byrne Arena in New Jersey on April 1st, 1988. Jerry Garcia said the song was heavily influenced by his mother's passing. James guessed 87. Ben guessed 90. So James was closer. James, what'd you hear there?
I heard a weak, unfortunately, like kind of tired Jerry voice. Brent kind of put me in the 80s, and it just felt kind of right there. As beautiful and poignant as that song is, like, I couldn't help but have, the emotional weight of it was only increased by, having his voice cut out for a little bit. So I knew it was somewhere around the latter part of the 80s.
I guess that's like just post coma, Jerry. So he had just learned how to play guitar again and learning how to.
For sure.
Ben guessed 90. Ben, why 90?
Yeah, I heard late period Brent in there also. I thought Jerry's lyric was a little bit, and we were talking about his health around that time. I thought that the tiredness, if you will, was a little bit attributed more to age than recovery. But at any rate, it had all those elements. Brent was right there. It would have been, pre Brent's death in 90, but anyway, that's kind of where I was. I was between 89 and 90, and 89 was actually jumping out at me. And I chose against my first inclination and wrote down 1990. that would have been he and I would have been 1 year apart on it if I did. But that was a good track too. It's nice hearing him play those ballads, and I loved how Brent would come in and complement the lyric on those slower tunes, and certainly with his keys as well, bringing that organ sound. His abilities on those decks of keys were really unparalleled, and his ability to sing also, and bring that raspy kind of thing about him was really, again, a lot of fun. Certainly marked a breaking point from that which came before him. I miss his playing, certainly.
All right. James goes up 1-0 in the series. He is one step closer to winning the Some Saxy Art prize pack. Ben needs this one to stay alive and force a game 3. Let's play the song.
In the timbers of the burial, the wolves are running round. The winter was so hard, it cold froze 10 feet beneath the ground. Don't murder me, I beg of you, don't murder me. Please don't murder me. I sat down to my supper, was a bottle of red whiskey. I said my prayers and went to bed. That's the last they saw of me. Don't murder me, I beg of you, don't murder me. Please don't murder me. When I awoke, the direwolf, 600 pounds of sin, was grinning at my window. All I said was, come on in, don't murder me. I beg of you, don't murder me. Please don't murder me.
All right, the guesses are in. Dire Wolf at Denver Coliseum on November 21st, 1973. Lyricist Robert Hunter said the song's narrator is the shadow of the man in the song who is dead at this point. It's a song about a ghost. James got exactly 1973. Ben guessed 1974. James wins the Some Saxy Art prize pack. He's champ of Guest of the Year. Congratulations, James. You're kind of on fire. You nailed it. Why 73?
It felt sparse and not sparse so much as bare a little bit more than later recordings would. And, you know, we had pure Keith going on, and 72 for me is, you know, just dominated by Europe. And so I went for 73.
I know because I know you.
Yeah.
That you are a big Bob Dylan guy.
Yeah.
I feel like Dire Wolf is kind of a Bob Dylan-y type song. Am I onto something there? Lyrically?
It's something that, like, he loves that type of thing. You know, early on in his career, when he was kind of when Bob Dylan was borrowing from classic American folk songs, that's when he did Peggy-O, for instance. You know, he would have hit on songs that, you know, kind of similarly would mention characters like the Dire Wolf, and, you know, take people, you know, into these tiny small towns that, you know, are fictional, but everyone understands exactly where they're happening. And I just think that's really powerful, and it adds to the music a lot. And plus, the lyrics on Dire Wolf are just, I mean, they're more dire than so much of the Grateful Dead. You know, there's literally them pleading, "Do not murder me," you know.
And the dude's dead too, like unsuccessfully pleading, "Don't murder me."
It adds so much.
Why do you think there's so much crossover between? Why do you think? I mean, clearly they toured together. They, the Dead cover Bob Dylan constantly, to the point where, like, I think we had 10 Bob Dylan covers or something over the course of these 15 episodes. Why did that happen, you think?
I think Dylan was such a sea change culturally that kind of enabled the Grateful Dead, and he was such a good writer lyrically that, you know, they couldn't help but be completely fascinated by him. I think the Dylan and the Dead stuff later on, there's something about Bob Dylan later on, and his hardcore fans don't like this impression, but he seems a little opportunistic later on. And I've always viewed the Dylan and the Dead stuff as Dylan kind of leeching off the Dead, because at that time the Dead were, I mean, just packing stadiums. They had a marketing approach that was unparalleled. They were connecting with young people, and Dylan had, you know, was in the middle of this Christian phase, coming out of that a little bit, and needed stadiums, you know, and he needed those audiences. And I don't think he had them at that point. His albums were still pretty solid, but overall he wasn't connecting with, you know, audiences in the same way. And so it's hard for me to kind of look at those albums as purely artistic collaborations. Do you know what I mean? Some of them are great. Some of them are great, but
So you're calling Bob Dylan careerist?
I mean, he's probably my favorite musician of all time, but he's 100% careerist, 100% calculated. And that's just part of it. That's just part of who he is.
James, you'll be back with us next week to defend your title. And yeah, thanks for doing this. Ben, 74, 1 year off. Sorry. James was just on fire. I don't know. Yeah. Why 74?
Well, firstly, congratulations to James. My, oh my, I think you were off maybe by like 1 year, one time or something this whole night.
A little suspicious, I'm going to add. And if anyone's thinking this at home, I swear to God, there's
Mike,
no fucking funny
walked
stuff.
Away with the big package. So well done.
Yeah, he pitches a perfect game. No funny stuff. I swear on Jerry, no funny stuff. Ben, yeah, go on.
Awesome. So again, I think I heard a little bit of in Jerry's voice. I heard I thought in the recording, I mentioned it earlier. I thought yet again I heard some little clue that led me to believe that they were in fact playing through the wall of sound PA. But yeah, we were talking about how it was a little bit of a more stripped down approach to Dire Wolf, and a little bit slower, and it was between 73 and 74 for me. I thought there was a recording reason to call it 74, but yeah, 73. It was a great year, great time for that band. That's probably my favorite era, that 73, 74, real jazzy, you know, Keith kind of pushing them to go in that direction. I'm probably more of a fan of the single drummer, only because I feel like there was a certain tightness and crispness that was about that sound from that era. Of course, 72 included as well. But that was all good stuff.
Well, it's really impressive how you're able to pick out the wall of sound in the recordings. Are you able to kind of explain what it sounds like to the rest of us so we can try to listen for it?
In the recordings, well, it seems like there's some type of at least as far as the voice is concerned, the lyric is concerned, it seems like there's, I'm gonna struggle with the wording here, but you can kind of almost, you can hear more than maybe they would have otherwise wanted you to. I feel, and I know that there's all sorts of, the dual microphone, and being 180 degrees out of phase, and so they tried to figure out how to filter the music out of their microphones, because they had all their speakers behind them. But at any rate, there's something about like a lisp or some type of there's something you can hear. And again, I apologize, I can't find the wording for it, but I felt like I heard it in that particular recording.
I like you said a lisp.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's really, really on point. Nice. Well, thank you so much for doing this, Ben. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great stuff, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll see you. We'll see you this summer on tour.
Yeah.
Great to see you, Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. All right. Subscribe to Guest of the Year on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. For show updates, follow us at Guest of the Year Show on Instagram. If you want to be a contestant on the show, sponsor the show, or make comments and ask questions, email us at guestoftheyearshow@gmail.com. Thanks so much to Some Saxy Art and Andrew. Again, Andrew's a preternaturally talented 24-year-old who is already drawing posters for huge bands and has amazing stuff on his site, which I'll again post in the description. Thanks so much to From the Lot for curating our prize packs every week, and shout out to Dylan for drawing the posters. Thanks so much for listening. For the fun facts, I relied heavily on Dead.net, Dead Disc, and Grateful Dead of the Day and their commenters, so thank you so much to them. Thanks to the amazing tapers whose recordings made this show possible. Congratulations to our new winner, James, and to our other contestants. Thanks for playing, and remember, it's all one song anyways.
And I bid you good night, good night, good night. And I bid you good night, good night, good night.